Good morning, everybody. It is July 20th. We're almost through July, and it is time for another edition of Mantra Monday, something that I enjoy doing for you and with you so much. This is a really interesting mantra that we're going to be going over today. And I have brought in other kinds of reference materials because we are doing the chapter 10 in Bhagavad Gita, which is called Opulence of the Absolute. So if you're tuning in for the first time, this is a conversation between Krishna, Bhagavan, and Prince Arjuna, and they are situated on a great battlefield, the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is an actual place in India. You can go and visit. It's considered a holy place. And the whole conversation revolves around basically understanding life and how to solve our ultimate material problems, which of course are birth and death. Birth, death, disease, and old age. So the Bhagavad Gita is considered to be the foundation ABCs of understanding what the difference is between matter and spirit, and also the nature of time and karma and yoga and of course the absolute truth. So today we are already up to verse 23. Let's just take a little sip of water here. It's been very hot. I know everyone back east has been experiencing a heat wave. So please stay hydrated and drink enough water. Actually, I saw a video of someone yesterday, Mother Pigeon, enjoying the old-fashioned cooling off in the fire hydrant. And open up the fire hydrant. Anyone who lives in a big city knows what that's like, because you probably you may not have access to a swimming pool or any of those things, or maybe even air conditioning in your apartment. So you go downstairs, someone turns on the sprinkler, and everyone plays in the water. an urban version of a waterfall. So, okay, as I was saying, today this is Opulence of the Absolute, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 23. And as always, I am going to be chanting in Sanskrit, and then I'm going to be giving the word-for-word translation, and then I will be giving the purport as given by Srila Prabhupada, and then I will try and explain, my little insights about what we're reading and try and break it down and translate it for us. And then today, in addition, I will also be using this book. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is the 5th canto, part 2. So Srimad Bhagavatam, it means, the beautiful pastimes of the Lord. It is considered to be the graduate study of spiritual knowledge. And then of course there's more. There's always more. There's always more stories. Okay, so let me put on my actually I don't need my glasses for this one. This is nice and big. Okay, and if you're watching this on YouTube later, you'll see that the verses are in the description below. Okay, so rudrāṇāṁ śaṅkaraś vitteśo yakṣa-rakṣasām, vasūnām pāvakaś Meru śikhariṇām aham. I'm going to repeat that verse. Rudrāṇāṁ śaṅkaraś vitteśo yakṣa-rakṣasām, rakṣasām, vasūnām pāvakaś Meru śikhariṇām aham. Good morning, whoever's watching. Make a comment so I know who you're here. Okay, so the synonyms for this mantra: rudrāṇāṁ, of all the Rudras. Śaṅkaraḥ, Lord Śiva. Cha, also asmi, I am. Vitta-īśaḥ, the Lord of the treasury of the demigods. Yakṣa-rakṣasām, of the Yakṣas and Rākṣasas. Vasūnām, of the Vasus. Pāvakaḥ, fire. Cha, also asmi, I am. Meru, śikhariṇām, of all mountains. Aham, I am. Translation. Of all the Rudras, I am Lord Śiva. Of the Yakṣas and Rākṣasas, I am the Lord of wealth, Kuvera. Of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni. And of mountains, I am Meru. I'm going to read that again. Of all the Rudras, I am Lord Śiva. Of the Yakṣas and Rākṣasas, I am the Lord of wealth, Kuvera. Of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni. And of mountains, I am Meru. Purport. There are 11 Rudras, of whom śaṅkaraḥ, Lord Śiva, is predominant. He is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord in charge of the mode of ignorance in the universe. The leader of the Yakṣas and Rākṣasas is Kuvera, the master treasurer of the demigods, and he is a representation of the Supreme Lord. Meru is a mountain famed for its rich natural resources. And of course, Agni, who is in charge of fire, or who is the representative of fire. I mentioned last week that when there is a fire sacrifice, on the occasion, for example, for a wedding, there is always a sacrificial fire, and that is Agni is represented there, and Agni, of course, is also considered to be the mouth of Lord Vishnu. Okay, so I hope that you are ready for a really interesting, cosmic, and far out Mantra Monday, because the information behind this verse is very intriguing, and it gets into the cosmology of the universe, of Bhū-mandala. Bhū-mandala is the planet upon which we are living. This is the Vedic name of the Earth planet. So first let me get into a breakdown of this particular verse. So, okay, of all Rudras, I am Lord Śiva. So Lord Śiva is someone who is very popular, and if you've ever been to a yoga studio, chances are you have seen an image of Lord Śiva somewhere in the yoga studio. Another name for Lord Śiva is Natyaraj. He is like the patron of dance, because at the end of this cosmic manifestation, he does a dance and he actually destroys the material world. Also, you may have seen Lord Śiva sitting in meditation. If you look down on this page below the live, I actually posted a photo, just a 10-minute warning that we were going to have this, but in that there's a photo of Shiva, or Mahadev, sitting in meditation. So he is a personality who is wearing, he wears like a little cloth, kind of a loin cloth. He wears a mala of skulls around his neck. He carries a trident. His carrier is Nandi, who is a bull. He has matted hair. He's kind of like the original Rasta. He wears a little top knot. And then you'll also see a crescent moon there. His throat is bluish. And in the depictions too, you'll notice that there's like water. That's actually a representation of the Ganges coming down and first landing on Lord Shiva's head after coming from Vajra, actually from coming from the upper planetary systems, and then making its way down through the universe and on the Earth planet. That is to break its fall, because it's water, the weight of water is very, very heavy. So there is a lot to Lord Śiva. He is a very interesting, complex, and merciful incarnation of Krishna. He is not exactly Vishnu Tattva. He is kind of like an expansion. He is given, let me see if I can remember this, I believe that he is given about 78% of the powers of Bhagavan, of Krishna himself. So it says in this mantra that of the 11 Rudras, of whom śaṅkaraḥ is Lord Śiva, is predominant. So this gets a little technical, actually. When I touched on this last week, so Krishna is a supreme enjoyer, and he appears as a cowherd boy, very youthful, plays the flute, and he's always enjoying himself with his friends and with the gopis, and he has loving exchanges with his parents and so forth. He lives a very pastoral, simple existence. So in the topmost spiritual planet in the creation, this is what's going on. It's a beautiful village, country life. It's peaceful. There's also, of course, play, and the residents there really do nothing but to enjoy themselves. However, as the material world is only 1/4, I should say, the spiritual world is 3/4 of God's creation. But there is the material world that has been made for people like you and me. Those of us who decided we wanted to leave and that we wanted to have an adventure, and we wanted to try on some other things. And so, for that reason, Krishna expands himself as the 3 Vishnus, right? So I talked about Mahavishnu last week and the week before. Oh, thank you, Rosie. Thank you. Glad you're liking the look. We are ascending. Have a new song in the works, and this just felt like a good direction. Okay, so last week I was explaining that it's Vishnu himself, that Krishna expands himself, Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu means all-pervasive. So there are the 3 Vishnus. There's Mahavishnu, there's Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and there's Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. And these Vishnus are responsible for the creation and the maintenance of the material world. That's where we come in, because we are here as Jiva. And as Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, he expands himself further as Paramatma to accompany us, the Jivas, the living entities, his parts and parcels, through all our various experiments and adventures as a witness, as our eternal friend. If we ever need help, we can always turn to him. So that is that part. Now, when you get into other functions in the material universe, so last week I was talking about the Adityas, and I was talking about how Vishnu expands himself as the Adityas, as the sun, as different aspects of the sun, and throughout the calendar year. There's 12 Adityas, there's 12 solar lunar months, okay? So then there are other things that have to go on in the universe. Brahma, who is actually the father of Lord Śiva, he is the co-creator, so he helps populate the universe. But then, as I just mentioned, Lord Śiva, he has several different functions, but his chief function at the end is to annihilate the universe. But he also is like a shepherd, if you were, for the lower living entities, for those living entities that are extremely mischievous, right? The Rakshasas and the yakshas, the ghosts, the bhutas, the goblins, these kinds of living entities. Jivas that have chosen to try that on for size. So let me pull out this book here and show you a little illustration. I said this is the 5th canto. So this is an illustration of the 11 Rudras, and you see Lord Śiva is there in the middle in that dancing pose that yogis, at least in the United States, know him more commonly as Natyaraj, okay? So I'm not going to get into all the 11 Rudras today and what their different functions are and all of that, but suffice it to say that this is what this verse is referencing, because the verse, Krishna says in this verse, of the 11 Rudras, I am Śaṅkaraś, Śiva. I am predominantly Lord Śiva of the 11 Rudras. So who is śaṅkaraś? Okay, let me see if I can find that illustration here. Okay. So Lord Śiva is known for meditating. He is actually sitting in meditation all the time. Before he's doing his destruction in the universe, he can often be found sitting in meditation. But who is he meditating upon? He is meditating upon his origin. He is meditating upon śaṅkaraś. So there is a picture of śaṅkaraś. You see? This is an aspect of Lord Vishnu, who also has 4 arms. Lord Vishnu is distinguished from Krishna because he has 4 arms, and he is holding different divine paraphernalia. The lotus flower, the conch shell, the disc, and the club.
One moment.
Siri thinks I want something. Okay, so I'm just touching on this because there's a lot to this, but it's instructive to know that Lord Śiva, who is so powerful, is humble. He understands that he is not the origin of everything, and he understands that in order to keep himself centered and to keep himself balanced and to keep himself purified and on mission, that he also needs to sit in meditation. So this is very instructive because Lord Śiva is an extremely powerful personality. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him later. Let's see who else is here. Hey, Henry. Good morning. So that's that part of the verse. Okay, so moving on. Yes, he is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord in charge of the mode of ignorance in the universe. So, in the Vaishnava cosmology, or in the Vedic cosmology, or theology, if you like, Lord Vishnu, again, he is the origin, right? I talked about Garbhodakṣayi Vishnu. We're talking about, of course, everything that's happening in the realm of the material universe, which is not eternal. Then you have Brahma. So Brahma, he is the firstborn in this material universe. He is considered to be the grandfather in the material universe, and he is born from the lotus flower from Lord Vishnu's navel. Now you remember I've mentioned Lord Brahma before. Lord Brahma sits in meditation for a very long time to try and understand who he is and what his purpose in life is. And eventually, after performing that sacrifice of meditation, he becomes enlightened. He actually gets to see his divine father, he gets to see Krishna, and then he is given his mission, which ultimately was his desire. He wanted to be co-creator, he wanted to be in that situation. As I mentioned, Brahma is not an eternal position, it is like a post. So there have been many Brahmas, and there will be many more. But Brahma, that position is to be respected. He is in the mode of passion. That is the thing to know. So Lord Vishnu is in the mode of goodness, actually in the transcendental mode of goodness. He is responsible. He takes care of the universe. He is the protector of the universe. He makes sure that everything is going properly. This is God's job. And it's, of course, easy for him. It's not a big deal for him. Brahma, he is in the mode of passion. So creation is considered to be in the mode of passion. And that is Lord Brahma's position. And then there is the mode of ignorance. And that is Lord Shiva's, he is in charge of the mode of ignorance. This is called tamas or tamagun. So you've got satyagun, you've got rajagun, and then you've got tamagun. So things like indolence, sleep, intoxication, depression, anger, and then this kind of mischief, these sort of darker forces, these all come under the purview of Lord Śiva. Lord Śiva himself is not a dark personality, but again, because he is in charge of the mode of ignorance, he has taken that merciful position to not forget those people who have actually forgotten themselves, who are involved in a lot of mischief. So Lord Śiva can look very fearsome, but he's actually very easily pleased. He's also easily angered, but he's also easily pleased. And in Vedic culture, many people will worship Lord Śiva because he is the giver of wealth. You can actually gain a lot of wealth by worshiping Lord Śiva, which leads to the next line in this verse. The leader of the Yakṣas and the Rākṣasas is Kuvera or Kuvera, the master of the treasury of the demigods, who is also a representation of the Supreme Lord. So if you've ever seen an image of Kuvera, he's actually a dwarf. He is very short, he has a stocky build, he's got a pot belly, and sometimes you see him with Lakshmi Devi, who is the goddess of fortune, and he's depicted, of course, with lots of pots of gold and things like that around him. He has a carrier, I believe the mongoose is his carrier, and he resides kind of in the region of the Himalayas, or the Himalayan mountains. Forgive me because I don't remember exactly which mountain he lives in, but that is his region. So that whole region kind of like of Asia, that is where he resides. Okay, so it says here that Kuvera is the leader of the Yakṣas and Rākṣasas. So who are the Yakṣas? Who are the Rākṣasas? This is interesting because we start to get into all the different kinds of living entities that are in this material creation. And as human beings, we hear stories about these things. They come to us in the form of legends and stories that are passed down again and again. But there are grains of truth in these stories and legends. So, the Yakṣas, they are the beings that live in forests, and they are a class of nature spirits. They're generally beneficial, although they can be mischievous. They have a corollary in Greek culture. So those of you who are familiar with Greek, quote, mythology may remember the Maenads. They are wood nymphs. There's a lot of, throughout the world, there are a lot of stories about women that live in the woods, about wood nymphs. So, this is a reality. And they can be either kind of wild, but in the legend of Orpheus, of course, after he was distraught because his wife was now living in the underworld, she died and she was taken to the underworld. There is a point there where he is wandering kind of despondent throughout the forest, and the Maenads wanted him to play for him. Of course, he wasn't interested in playing because he was extremely sad and extremely depressed. And of course, that had a bad turn. They became angry with Orpheus. They didn't appreciate that he was grieving, and they actually tore him limb from limb. So these kinds of creatures, you know, they are powerful and they are wild, and you know, human beings need to be mindful and tread gently when we're in an area that's not really our domain. The Rakshasas so are a class of demon. They are asuras. So sura means goodness, and asura means, you know, not good. Counter to that, they are man-eaters. They are shapeshifters. They are, in the West, we would know them as vampires. In Vedic culture, Rakshasas live in various places and do various things. So I'll give a few examples. The Ramayan, Lord Ramachandra, who's his chief rival, who's his chief enemy in the Ramayan? The Rakshasa Ravana. Ravana, who lived in Lanka. So if you're familiar with that pastime, you know about Ravana, you know about Ramachandra, you know about Hanuman, and you know about the burning of Lanka. If you go back through my videos, you can hear all about Ravan. But he was an individual who caused a lot of distress. His name literally means to make others cry. So that gives you a little idea of what kind of entity and Rakshasa he is. Also, in the Bhagavad Gita, there is an encounter that the Pandavas have with a Rakshasa named Hidamba. Hidamba had a sister named Hidimbi, who actually fell in love with Bhima. But at any rate, that is another example of Rakshasa, who basically was trying to kill the Pandavas. Then there's another example in Krishna's pastimes of a Rakshasa, Bakasura. Bakasura was also a shapeshifter, so he took the form of like a giant duck, a giant bird. And when the cowherd boys were, you know, out having fun in the forest, and boys are very adventurous, you know, they saw this giant bird with a huge beak, and they thought, oh, let's go into it, let's climb into it, you know. And of course, the purpose of Bakasura is that he was trying to kill Krishna, and he was trying to kill Krishna's cowherd boyfriends. Not possible, but he tried. So that's just an example of what a Rakshasa is. Also, I could mention the Bhutas. The Bhutas are ghostly personalities that are often associated with Lord Śiva. They are definitely malevolent. These are the types of entities that will disguise themselves to human beings, let's say traveling through forests, basically with the purpose to eat them. They find human beings to be a very, very good snack. Of course, we don't have very many forests anymore, and people aren't really traveling through the forests in the way that they were back in Vedic times, when, you know, this was the main way to get from place to place, walking on foot or maybe on carriage from place to place. But this is just to give you a little idea of what we're talking about in this verse, these kinds of living entities. And then, Kuvera, again, he's the treasurer of the demigods. So, just like we have, you know, the Federal Reserve. I don't know what they have in Europe exactly, but, you know, there's a place, there's someone responsible, or there is an entity responsible for wealth, you know, and also, in this case, metaphysically speaking, kind of a bestower of wealth as well. So if you have the blessings of Kuvera, you're going to be wealthy, you're going to be well off. Now, let us get into Meru. Mount Meru. Meru is a mountain famed for its rich natural resources. And I pulled up some information about that because this is super interesting. This gets into the metaphysical and physical center of the universe according to the Vedic version. According to the Vedic version, Mount Meru is the axis upon which the earth is, how shall I say, founded. I'm going to read a description of it. I will say that it is a pillar of the world, and it is located in the heart of the 7 mountain ranges that symbolize a lotus flower. So what the heck am I talking about here? Okay, let me take a sip of water. If anyone here is into astrology or astronomy, Jyotish, according to the Vedic version, right? There's a sidereal version of astrology that is, quote, the Western version of astrology, and then there is Jyotish, which is the Vedic version, which is very deep, and it actually gives you insight into the actual physical construct of the universe that we are living in. Okay, so going back to the Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, chapter 16, there is a whole chapter here where Sukadeva Goswami is trying to explain to Maharaj Parikshit the glories of the Lord. You could say that this is also an expansion of the opulences of the Absolute, that it is indeed, by giving a description of what is called Jambudvip. Okay, so I'm gonna read this. Bear with me. You're gonna be introduced to a lot of concepts here that you've probably never heard before. And at the end of it, hopefully you will understand a little bit about Mount Meru and why Krishna is saying that of mountains, he is that mountain. I think the thing to bear in mind again is that the Lord is the maintainer of the universe. It's a big, 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 big job, and really only one person is cut out to do it. So anything that requires an enormous amount of power and energy to maintain something for a span of years that is beyond our human comprehension, Lord Vishnu is our guy. He's our person. Okay. While describing the character of Maharaj Priyavrata and his descendants, Sukadeva Goswami also described Mount Meru and the planetary system known as Bhumandala. Bhumandala is like a lotus flower, and its 7 islands are compared to the whorl of a lotus. The place known as Jambudvip is in the middle of that whorl of the lotus. In Jambudvip there is a mountain known as Sumeru, which is made of solid gold. The height of the mountain is 84,000 yojanas, of which 16,000 yojanas are below the earth. Its width is estimated to be 32,000 yojanas at its summit and 16,000 yojanas at its foot. So, to give you the calculation, a yojana equals approximately 8 miles. So if you multiply 32,000 by 8, you'll begin to get an idea of the scale and how big these mountains and mountain ranges that we are talking about here. It goes on. On the southern side of the land known as Ilavrita Varsha, Varsha means tract of land, are the mountains known as Himavan, Hemakuta, and Nishada, and on the northern side are the mountains Nila, Sveta, and Shringa. Similarly, on the eastern and western side, there are the Malyavan and Gandamandan, two large mountains. Surrounding Sumeru mountain are the four mountains known as Mandara, Meru Mandara, Suparshva, and Kumuda, each 100,000 yojanas long and 10,000 yojanas high. So these are, the sierras of these great, great mountains. On these four mountains there are trees, 1,100 yojanas high, a mango tree, a rose apple tree, a kadamba tree, and a banyan tree. There are also lakes full of milk, honey, sugarcane juice, and pure water. These lakes can fulfill all desires. There are also gardens named Nandana, Chitrarata, Vaibrajaka, and Sarvotobhadra. On the side of Suparshva mountain is a kadamba tree with streams of honey flowing from its hollows. And on Kumuda mountain there is a banyan tree named Shatavalsa, from whose roots flow rivers containing milk, yogurt, and many other desirable things. Surrounding Sumeru mountain, like filaments of the whorl of a lotus, are 20 mountain ranges, such as Kuranga, Kurara, Kushamba, Vaikanka, and Trikuta. To the east of Sumeru are the mountains Jatarta and Devakuta. To the west are Pavana and Pariyatra. To the south are Kailash and Karavira. And to the north are Trishanga and Makara. These 8 mountains are about 18,000 yojanas long, 2,000 yojanas wide, and 2,000 yojanas high. On the summit of Mount Sumeru is Brahmapuri, the residence of Lord Brahma. Each of its 4 sides is 10,000 yojanas long. Surrounding Brahmapuri are the cities of King Indra and 7 other demigods. These cities are 1/4 of the size of Brahmapuri. Okay, so this explanation of Bhumandala and its construct and the ascent, the heights that you were going to, you're now beginning to get an understanding of what it's like to live in an atmosphere where you live an extremely long time, where you have facilities for enjoyment that are far beyond our facilities for enjoyment here on the Earth planet, right? So now we're starting to touch into the residences of the demigods. It's mentioned here, Indra and other demigods have their residences at these heights. And Brahmapuri, this is actually the place where Lord Brahma lives. It's described that Lord Brahma's residence, the streets are paved with gold. So when people are talking about heaven, they are actually talking about these areas. Now I know that this is maybe controversial and maybe a bit of a shock for people, but where we belong as jivas is actually the spiritual sky. But of course, for us human beings, especially in Kali Yuga, that spend the majority of our time suffering and struggling with different things, this, sounds good to us. So basically, you have to be qualified to live in these regions. You can't just go there. Although I think there have been some accounts of explorers stumbling across a place that seemed completely out of geophysical possibility when they were traveling very, very, very far north in these kinds of mountain chains. So perhaps somehow or another they were allowed to see a glimpse of this and didn't know where they were. It happens from time to time. So moving on, I'm going to now skip to a description a little bit more of a description of Mount Meru. Something that I've already said, but I want to repeat it here. Okay, so remember, this is the representation of the Supreme Lord in the material world. Well, the Sanskrit is Yo vayam dvipa kuvalaya kamala kosha byantara kosha niyuta yojana vishala samavartulu yata pushkara patram. The planetary system known as Bhumandala resembles a lotus flower, and its 7 islands resemble the whorl of that flower. The length and breadth of the island known as Jambudvip, which is situated in the middle of the whorl, are 1,000,000 yojanas, 8 million miles. Jambudvip is round like the leaf of a lotus flower. In Jambudvip there are 9 divisions of land, each with a length of 9,000 yojanas, that's 72,000 miles. There are 8 mountains that mark the boundaries of these divisions and separate them nicely. So then there is an explanation pretty much of what we've already read about where these mountains are described, beginning with the Himalayas. So the Himalayan mountains are just sort of the beginning of this incredible series of mountain ranges that go up to the residences of the denizens of the heavenly planets. Okay, so now again, just to reiterate, I'm going to skip the Sanskrit on this part, but it says, the next verse, it says, amidst these divisions, or varshas, a varsha is a tract of land, is the varsha named Ilavrita, which is situated in the middle of the whorl of the lotus. Within Ilavrita varsha is Sumeru mountain, which is made of gold. Sumeru mountain is like the pericarp of the lotus-like Bhumandala planetary system. The mountain's height is the same as the width of Jambudvip, or in other words, 100,000 yojanas, or 800,000 miles. Of that, 16,000 yojanas, or 128,000 miles, are within the earth, and therefore the mountain's height above the earth is 84,000 yojanas, or 672,000 miles. The mountain's width is 32,000 yojanas, 256,000 miles, at its summit, and 16,000 yojanas at its base. Okay, so this gives you an idea of why Krishna is saying that of mountains, he is Mount Meru. And there's more to Mount Meru, as I mentioned. The solar system, or what we consider the different planets, actually rotate around Mount Meru. So if you can kind of think of it as Mount Meru is in the center of our universal system here, and it is holding things together. I guess you could almost describe it as being like a force of gravity, but it is a real thing. And around that, everything is rotating. And it is very, very deep. There has been some speculation from scientists about what is actually in the core of the Earth. So, as it turns out, that little kind of clue that they have is correct. The mountains, we see them on the surface, but they also go underneath the surface of the Earth. So there's a lot going on in the universe. It is very rich in minerals, of course it would be, because Bhagavan is opulent. And, as you get into these mountain ranges and stuff, here in the United States, we're always digging for different things within mountains and destroying things in that way. But this also exists, in other parts of the world. But the thing about these mountains and mountain ranges is that they are actually divinely protected. You can't just climb up them. You have to be qualified to be able to go there. And there's more to it, to all of that, which I'm not going to get into today. But that is the point. So, I think I've pretty much covered everything I can cover about this mantra today. It was a lot of information. I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to repeat the Sanskrit, and I'm going to repeat the translation. Rudrāṇāṁ śaṅkaraś vitteśo yakṣa-rakṣasām vasūnām pāvakaś Meru śikhariṇām aham. Translation: of all the Rudras, I am Lord Śiva. Of the Yakṣas and Rākṣasas, I am the Lord of Wealth, Kuvera. Of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni. And of mountains, I am Meru. There are okay, so I'm gonna leave it at that. You're probably gonna need to watch this video a few times. There's a lot of information here. It's a lot to grasp, but it is good to understand who we are as jivas in the scope of things, in the cosmology of things, in the face of the greatness of the Creator, and that there is a lot more than meets the eye. Our ability to understand things simply through our powers of deduction is limited. That is why the Vedas are considered to be our mother, because this knowledge is descending, and it is passed down, through the saints and the sages, through time. And fortunately, Srila Vyasadeva, with the help of Ganesh, our favorite elephant god, took the time to compile and write down these literatures for us in this dark age of Kali Yuga, so we could actually get some illumination and get some light, and kind of put all these things, together and put them in some context, with the ultimate aim of being able to appreciate first, respect, and revive our loving relationship with the Supreme, who is our best friend, and who is a totally awesome dude, to say that in surfer language. No disrespect. But we also have to learn to make friends with the Lord. It's wonderful, of course, to have that respect and see the Lord in the mood of awe and reverence. But as the Bhagavad Gita is showing us in this conversation that Arjuna is having with his friend Parātasarthi, with Krishna, who is actually driving his chariot, there is a friendship there and a more intimate exchange that is available to us. But first, in order to get there, we have to purify ourselves, and we have to purify our consciousness and purify our existence and free ourselves of different material contaminations and material limitations and so on and so forth. And so that is why, we begin with the Bhagavad Gita, then we gradually work our way through the Srimad Bhagavatam, until we get up to the 10th canto, which is a more intimate look at the Lord, and then eventually move on to books like the Chaitanya Charitamrita and so on and so forth. The devotional writings and the bhakti texts are virtually unlimited. There's so much to study, probably more than we can study for in one lifetime. But if we are looking for nectar, and we are looking for a way to uplift ourselves and feel good and rise above the petty concerns of this plane that most of us spend our time in the shallows, there's plenty to chew on here. All right. Okay, so I guess that is it. It is already 10 minutes to 9, and I wish you a great rest of your week. I am going to be over on Instagram at 9:35 a.m. to repeat this lesson. And I'm just really grateful that you guys are here. And thank you so much for digging my look. Thank you to Henry Junoho, who is a wonderful photographer and has been a wonderful friend, for helping me step into the future. More good things coming. This Wednesday, speaking of more good things coming, I have a very special announcement to make inside Yoga on the Dance Floor group. So be sure to be there for that, and I'll be making that announcement at the beginning, right before the cooking demo that I will be doing this week, where I will be showing you how to use salt with fruit, specifically chaat masala. And I will also be giving you a recipe on how to make your own chaat masala at home. And of course, the awesome little fruit recipe that you will have as well. So I hope to see you in there. That is going to be Wednesday morning. That's going to be 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I spend about an hour in there, sometimes a little bit less, showing you around my kitchen and just trying to share these recipes so you can eat healthier and eat a variety of things and learn how to make more foods without using animal products, right? Because we have to raise our vibration. Okay. All right. If I don't see you in IG, I will see you next week for the next Mantra Monday. Peace. Thanks for being here.